Sensationally silver, because you are.
Welcome, everyone, to Sensationally Silver, A State of Mind, conversations with extraordinary, ordinary persons of age, people who are going to bring you information, inspiration, and validation. Join us. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Sensationally Silver, A State of Mind, conversations with extraordinary, ordinary persons of age. Today, my guest is Randy Stevens, and he's going to be talking about something that's of tremendous interest to me. I want to do it, and I hope it's of interest to you, or at least that it becomes of interest to you after you've listened to Randy explain what it's all about. So, welcome, Randy.
Well, it's good to be here. Thank you, Robin.
Thanks. I'm glad you are here. And Randy, we have to start out with your age because everyone has to qualify to be on this program. So you need to be 60 or over. Tell me your age.
I qualify in a big way. I am 74.
All right, let's sail right into this, Randy. So Randy's my guest today because I want to learn about rewilding. Randy, define that for us.
Well, rewilding is another way of saying it, perhaps, would be habitat restoration. You're returning your yard, your area to a more natural state, a state that it would have been in before all the development occurred. Here we are in Southern California. The type of landscapes, plant communities that we have here naturally are like chaparral and coastal scrub, where you have a lot of plants such as buckwheats and sages that really do well here, belong here. The animals that and insects that evolved require those plants to be here because they co-evolve with those plants. So you're returning your land into a more natural state, a state that is more productive, being as productive as it can be, because areas that evolved with the plants and animals that they did still need those plants to continue to develop as they need. And there's been so much with the development, especially in Southern California, so much of our natural land has disappeared. I think of the coastal scrub, only a small percentage of it is still left, and many species of birds and insects require those environments to survive. So it is critically important. I may get into it a bit later as we're talking, but there is a book that's called The Nature's Best Hope by Ptolemy. Explains that we're seeing some extinctions. Many insect populations are down 50% in the last 50 years. And unless we return land that's been changed back to its natural state, this is only going to get worse. So it's critically important right now. We have a biodiversity crisis. Many species are in decline. And this is something that each individual can do. And we don't have to be an expert to do it either. We're all capable of making a contribution to rewild, to help nature out.
So, what was your particular turning point, Randy, where you decided to make this commitment? Because I'm imagining, since I'm considering this on my farm, a lot of physical labor is involved, probably some expense. What, I don't want to say changed your mind, but educated you? I know the book, but what about inside?
I've always had, I was very lucky. When I was a boy, my grandfather had a ranch in northern San Diego County. It was completely pristine. Chaparral Hills, a lot of coastal scrub. It was just natural, and I spent time out there, and I was pretty lucky. Not every kid gets that kind of exposure, but it influenced me in a strong way that this is the way things meant to be. But when I got older and had a home and lived in regular communities, you didn't see people with native plants in their yards. As it turns out, native plants got a bad rap. They were in the old days before people learned that, well, we could just native plants, they don't need any water, they don't need any care, you just let them grow. Well, that's not the case. Native plants still need a little bit of care and maintenance, that sort of thing. And so when you learn about that, then you'll take advantage of it. I happen to, before I put in my own yard, I lived in San Juan Capistrano before moving to Santa Barbara. And I walked by a house one day. It is full of manzanitas and other plants that I knew were natives. And man, I can't believe this looks so good. I talked to the owner. He says, well, there's a native nursery called the Tree of Life Nursery. And I'm getting excited. So I got to the Tree of Life Nursery in east of San Juan Capistrano. Tons of native plants in a beautiful setting. They had books about how to grow native plants. They had pictures of how good they could look. Well, the more I learned, the more I realized, hey, anybody can do it. This is the thing to do. So I went home, I got a book. I'll tell you about the book later. And I just tore out my yard. It took a little while, a little bit of work, tore it out, put in native plants, and I was transformed. And the more I learned, the more excited I got about it. The more birds I saw in my yard, the more insects I saw in my yard. I said, this is working. It's not that difficult. So I got really, really excited. And it reminded me of those days when I was a child. The smells and aromas that you get from native plants, the sagey smell, it just is all part of the experience. It's another way of putting it is native plants give you sort of a sense of place. You know that you belong there. You know that they belong there, that it's right. And after I got those plants in there, all the old plants I had before, they felt so wrong. It was just a change of attitude, and it happened naturally.
My former husband is still in his 80s because he loves it. He's still a landscaper. And I had no awareness until I read the book I read on rewilding, how almost everything that was in my yard had come from Europe or some other place. Very, very different evolution of those plants than what I'm a California girl. I grew up in Burbank. I mean, I'm just Southern California from birth. And I had not lived with that around me, certainly in the hills when I was young, but not around me. The thing that we're struggling with so much here in Southern California, of course, and have for years and years, is drought. And although I know native plants aren't absolutely impervious to drought, they're certainly far more tolerant than so many of the plants that are from other parts of the world, including the US, but aren't native here. So that's another benefit, that we can relax a little bit and use less of our resources, fewer of our resources, to support this natural plant life that brings back the insects. What I learned from that book was it's kind of a thing that builds. You get the insects, and then you get the birds, and then you get the other wildlife, and this pyramid of life starts rehabiting or re-inhabiting, both, I suppose, your land. And where I am, I'm on a creek that is one of the very few year-round creeks in Southern California, although it did dry up for about 2 or 3 years during the worst of the drought, but it runs all year round. It used to run far more strongly than it does now. It used to even have the steelhead coming up, but things change, freeways go in, all sorts of stuff.
Yeah.
But that creek and the riparian woodland that is protected by law, thank goodness, right up to the creek. I have an acre back from the creek that is protected. And because I'm next to a hill and the creek curves, I have at least 4 very definitive habitats. I have high, low, north, south, east, west, and the birding. I go across the bridge and there are people with their binoculars all the time because it's so rich in bird life. So I want to invite those critters to come farther in to the farm, and I hear what you're saying about the rewards, about seeing more wildlife and the smells. I didn't even think of that. What a
Well,
lovely gift.
Daryl and I, every morning we go for a walk in our garden. I have put little trails in there, and we do it every morning. We always see wildlife. We always enjoy the smells, and through the different seasons, we'll have different plants that are flowering, different looks. We just can't imagine not having that anymore. I guess we're spoiled, but
I love hearing that because I walk around my farm every day. It's my form of exercise when I don't leave. Just I have some health issues and it's really important for me to move. They say motion is lotion, and I think it's really true. But the idea of touring through this native this native area, it was all an avocado grove when I bought this farm.
oh,
And bit by bit, I took out the avocados because I have horses and I wanted to make pastures. And I'm not ready to give up the pastures, but I took more of the avocados out, and there's quite a space. So, what about space? How small is it reasonable to go and still expect that there are some rewards in terms of the wildlife that appears or reappears?
just about if you live in an apartment, because I've talked to people who come into the botanical gardens about their homes, what they have at home. Many people just have potted plants, but they have potted plants that attract pollinators, and they'll get hummingbirds in there, they'll get butterflies in there. So I don't think you can be too small. When you have a lot of area, you've got all sorts of possibilities, and you can still make small spaces that will be enjoyable for you to hang out in, and you can make your larger spaces. There's just all kinds of possibilities, but I don't think it's at all too small. Our house is on a quarter acre, and in the backyard, we've made a small little area with lemonade berry screens. So we have a very intimate garden with bird baths and sages and such that attract the hummingbirds and butterflies. And then out in the front yard, it's more wide open. We have just larger plants, oak trees, that sort of thing, and you can do a lot with that too.
I remember from my visit to the Botanic Garden recently that the fellow who led us on a tour of it said, plant an oak tree, put
Yes,
oak trees, because he was talking about how much they enrich the whole habitat, all the different life forms that
yes.
dwell there, use whatever, all of it. And my farm is slowly returning to that oak forest kind of thing that it
Yes.
was once upon a time, because those little acorns turn into oaks. And where I left them, where I don't have to have space to move a vehicle or something, they're coming back every
Yeah.
year. I have more. Yeah.
The oak tree is probably the number one best plant you can have. Oak trees are called, well, they're a type of keystone species. A keystone species is a plant that is so important to the environment that it produces an oversized contribution to the biodiversity. Oak trees, more of the butterflies and moths have their larvae on the oak trees than any other plant. So keystone species, which make up or maybe only 14% of the plants, can provide up to 80% of the benefits. So when you go natives, when you really want to help wildlife, you think about native species, keystone species, and the oak is like the best. Another good one is the cherry tree, Catalina cherry. It also hosts over 100 types of caterpillars and such, which are extremely important. Little birds, when birds are being raised by their mothers, they require almost entirely protein from caterpillars, and without oak trees, they just would be in big trouble. So good choice with the oak tree.
So tell us, Randy, the steps. I'm assuming the first step is to clear the land, but maybe I'm mistaken. What are those steps and what's the best way to do them? And I'm assuming that we want to avoid weed killers and all that sort of thing as we're preparing that soil, because that would kind of defeat the whole purpose
That,
of this.
that's correct. So I always tell people that the first step, no matter how you plan on doing it, if you plan on doing it yourself, if you plan on hiring an outside landscaping company to do the whole thing for you, the first thing you should do is a little bit of education. Get a book, go to the Botanic Garden. There's a great book called California Natives for the Garden by Carol Bornstein. It gives you kind of an overview of native plants. It's just that the more you know, the more you're going to be able to communicate with, if you're having someone else do it for you, what you want. And you yourself, when you educate yourself and you learn about what the possibilities are, then you're going to make the right choices. So you can get a few books on it. You can just go to the Botanic Garden. They have so many examples of what works well. So just do a little bit of education, then decide, am I going to do this myself? Am I going to hire someone? Am I going to split the work up? In my case, I decided that I was going to manage the project myself of the house and do half the labor myself and have my gardener do half the labor. And I realized I was at an advantage. A lot of people don't have the time. I'm still pretty physically fit, so I could do a lot of the labor myself. But after you've kind of educated yourself, the first step is, you're right, you want to clear the land of everything you have and try and do that without pesticides. If you have a lawn, there's non-toxic methods of getting rid of it. There's a method called sheet mulching, where you can cover the lawn with cardboard and mulch several months in advance, and it will kill the lawn naturally. And then the leftover mulch and cardboard actually becomes sort of a base for your new yard. But yeah, so the first thing is to take out all your stuff. And when you're planting, the ideal time to plant your native garden is in the fall. You can plant other times of the year, but what's nice about planting in the fall is that you're planting ahead of the rainy season, and you get your plants in, their root systems are developing, and then you've got the cooler weather and the rain coming that helps them to establish themselves. And for the first year or so of the life of most native plants, you might have to give them a little bit of extra water, but still, by the time summer comes around and they heat, your plants have a well-established root system. So they're going to require a lot less extra water. And you don't want to water too much in the summertime, because the warm soils and stuff can harbor funguses, which are bad for your plants. And native plants, we're in a Mediterranean climate. That means we get winter rains and we get months of no rain in the summertime. The plants have evolved for that. That's what they want. So if you did plant, say, late in spring or summer, you're kind of giving them water because they need water to survive, because they're young plants, at a time that they're not really expecting it too much. So anyway, so plant it if you can for a fall planting, and then you can do you're going to have to take out all your old plants, and you're going to need to design. You might have some hardscaping that you're going to want to put in. That gives you time to do all of that prior to the fall. So get your hard work done first, and the best, most fun part is planting your plants. That's very enjoyable. It can be kind of a pain cutting out the old plants and such, but planting the new stuff, that's where it's at.
Yeah. So I'm hoping, of course, that lots of people who are watching this or listening to this are not from Southern California, and they're thinking, well, this doesn't apply to me. But in just about every area, there is a botanic garden, because there are people like Randy who love to garden and want to share that knowledge and that experience with other people. So you go there and you see what works in that place. And more those gardens are becoming dedicated to supporting this rewilding theory, this idea that we need to support the plants in our area that belong there, that are native there. So the other thing, and I know Randy participated in this because I heard about it, you can go on a garden tour of places that have become dedicated to rewilding. You can see what it looks like, get ideas, get inspired, get reassured that it isn't going to be just like, desert and nothing else if that isn't where you live. So Randy did that, and we're going to be sharing some pictures of his yard, his garden, and hopefully that will give you some confidence and some inspiration about how to go about this amazing process. It's a contribution we can make, we can give back to this beautiful planet we live on, to support our place in it, that it can support the others that belong there, the animals, the little critters, everything. I have a lot of milkweed on my property. The first one showed up completely by accident. It showed up in a little pot that I had planted, and I tried to pull it out. I thought it was a weed. It wasn't coming out. So I thought, well, why don't you just wait and see? Oh my gosh, the most magical thing happened. The plant grew, got these wonderful yellow and orange flowers on it. Then the butterflies came, the monarchs, which have to have milkweed in order to lay their eggs. That's the only thing their little baby caterpillars will eat. And those caterpillars eat and get bigger and bigger and bigger, just like that story, the very hungry caterpillar or whatever it is. And then they make their chrysalis, which in my opinion is one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen. It looks like a piece of jade dotted with 24 karat gold. It's exquisite. I got to watch this whole thing, and it was a complete gift. That plant showed up, then the butterflies, then the caterpillars, then the next butterflies. And I now have butterflies all over my garden because milkweed self seeds all over the place. And I'm so welcoming of it. I love to see it. And I love to look in the leaves and see if I can see those little critters. So that's the magic that we get to participate in when we make room for this natural way of being on our little piece of the earth. Right, Randy?
That's right. It's so good that you're doing that too, because natural milkweed all over the country is really under stress because it gets taken out, for farms and that sort of thing. And some people don't realize the importance of it. But when you put it in your yard, you are really doing a big benefit for monarchs in particular, for the milkweed.
Yeah. And I believe fennel, which I have all over the place. Is it fennel?
Fennel, yes, one of the swallowtail butterflies relies
Yes.
on the
I
fennel.
don't see as many of those as the milkweed, but they're around and they're magnificent, those great big giant butterflies.
Mhm.
I've learned that the larger the butterfly, the more slowly it flies. So those
That's true.
those swallowtails, they just no no no, and the little ones just buzz around.
Yeah.
It's so much fun to watch, and I feel like I'm constantly celebrating life. What we're going to wrap this up now. Um, what would you say to other persons of age?
I would say that keep doing what you like to do and keep learning. One of the most enjoyable things about staying with native plants is there's so much to learn, so much to get excited about. So keep passionate about things. Keep trying. Stay healthy. Do the right things for your body. Eat well and exercise, because you can be happy to a very, very late age, I believe, if you take care of yourself, pursue things that you enjoy. Just be smart about it. That would be my advice.
If I hear a theme, and I could be off, but what I hear is make the extra effort, whether
Yes,
it's a physical effort or a mental effort, just give it that extra bit of energy and then find out what's going to happen. Realize the benefits of that. Is that about right?
I think that's right.
Yeah,
You're going
yeah.
to find things that you didn't think of before that are going to
Mhm.
work out great for you.
Keep exploring That's a great message, Randy. And it just occurs to me, if one of the things is travel, like it is for you and your partner, if you've got this native plant thing going on, you can leave it alone and take a trip because it's
Yeah,
going to be maintained by the area it lives in. It's meant to be there. So,
that's one of the nice things about it. You can just forget about it and it's going to be there when you come back. You're right.
yeah, yeah, I
Absolutely.
love that. Randy, thank you so much for being my guest today.
Oh, it
And
was
thank
fun.
you. Yeah, it was fun. And thank you, everybody who's joined us. Come back next time for Sensationally Silver, A State of Mind. Bye for now. Sensationally Silver, A State of Mind is sponsored by Sensationally Silver, a complete hair care product line created especially for people with hair like ours, naturally gray and white hair. Sensationally Silver products can be found exclusively at sensationallysilver.com.
Sensationally silver, because you are.